We live in a fascist dictatorship. Now, yes, I hear you. Yes, we still have laws. Yes, we still have a constitution. But they mean absolutely nothing if someone is not willing to enforce them or if we're not willing to take those freedoms for ourselves. And effectively, right now, the checks and balances that our founding fathers tried to put in place to prevent this kind of thing, which they saw would inevitably occur. So far, those checks and balances have failed us. I'm not saying all of the rails are completely off. There are still some things that can check him, but yeah, for the most part, they failed us. The Supreme Court has failed us. Congress has failed us. But here's the thing. Here's why it's really important and really a good thing to recognize that live in a fascist dictatorship, is because that's when the action can start. As long as people are in denial about what is happening in this country, we're not going to really be able to do anything about it. I'm serious. The stage of denial when a fascist dictatorship takes over is one of the most dangerous phases. Because while everybody is debating whether or not we are in a fascist dictatorship, or earlier in the year it was, are we in a constitutional crisis yet? Can we officially call this a constitutional crisis? While they're doing fascist shit all over this country, and then people are debating. Okay, so first of all, we need to accept reality. Second of all, that reality empowers us to now do things. Civil disobedience, uncivil obedience, which I also like to call, what's the word? Malignant, malignant compliance. There, but until people recognize what's happening in a situation like this, you really can't get real movement in opposition. You can't really build a resistance when people don't realize what it is they're resisting and people don't realize the importance of what they're doing. And you see this reflected in that 3.5 or 3.7% rule of protest that people talk about so much online. And that's not some magic number like, oh, if you get that percentage of the population protesting, then you're going to overthrow fascism. That's not how it works. Protests don't overthrow fascism. Protests build community. Protests inspire. Protests let people see, if that person has the courage to be out there and doing it, then I can too. Protests are about building the resistance, but it is not the actual functional thing that will destroy the fascism, okay? But the reason why the percentage of the population that engages in protests is important is because it is reflective of what percentage of the population has accepted what's happening in the country and now wants to do something about it. Another good example of this is in Chile, when they had their fascist dictatorship, in which they overthrew back in the 80s. That fascist dictator had beat the people down for a number of years at that point. He had purged voter rolls, he had disenfranchised people, he had openly threatened and used violence against people for, who were going to vote against him. And then he decided to hold a quote-unquote free and fair election, knowing that the voter rolls had been purged and all of this stuff. So they started a movement, which was a big tent movement. It was everybody from like the soft right all the way through the Marxists. And they came together in one opposition. And in less than a year, they managed to register to vote almost 90% of the population. Imagine the scale of that, okay? Imagine the scale of that. And the turnouts were record-breaking. And even then, he tried to stay in power. Does this sound familiar to you at all? even then, their dictator tried to stay in power. And at that point, the pressure from the people and everyone turning against him was so great that his own generals were like, nah, dude, we're out. No, you're going to have to go. I'm sorry, you're going to have to go. Because he had said for years that he would never leave office. But he did. Just saying.